Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today we're going to do a video on something I get asked about quite frequently, and it's a great question. Can I paint over previously painted furniture? So the answer is yes, you can. I'm going to kind of go through the steps today, the right steps actually, that will be very helpful if you choose to do this. Now, one of the things that I will say is there's a lot of steps that do have to be taken in order to get a really good finish. I myself, maybe about once a year, take on a previously painted project that somebody really wants me to do. And so I kind of say, okay, I'll do it, and then I realize why I don't do it. There's a lot of prep that goes into it. First of all, if it's not your piece that you painted, you have no idea what products they use. Sometimes they don't know what products they use, the prep they use. So you just don't want to paint over something because your finish is only going to be as good as what is currently on there. So my recommendation is, first step is to sand. Now I started doing that yesterday on these pieces when I realized I should shoot a video. But you guys have seen me sand time and time again. That's nothing new. I will list down below what I used. I just used my Orbital DeWalt sander. I'll list the different grits. I did fill a couple of things with wood putty, and then I finished sand it. Now, the next step is where I'm gonna start showing you guys. So the first thing you wanna do is sand. Now you don't have to sand the entire finish to bare wood. I'll show you a picture of what I did. And then you want to sand it to a point where this particular piece I had looked like it was hand painted, no idea what type of paint. I'm going to assume a latex household paint because the way it sanded off, I've had experience with that before, and that's kind of what most people who don't do this for a hobby or a living will use. So you want to sand to a point where you no longer see brush strokes. I saw a lot, so that's easy to get out. Then what you want to do is completely wipe down the piece. I use a microfiber cloth, completely wipe it down, get all that sanding dust off, and then I go ahead and I prime. Now, would I prime the whole piece? Yes, I would. In this case, the pieces that I'm working on are black. They were painted black, and I think something underneath that, and a white. And so I'm gonna prime these entirely. I'm gonna use my General Finishes Stain Blocker Primer, and I'm gonna go ahead and coat the entire piece. Now, if you only had to spot prime, I would recommend using something like this. And when I say spot prime, if you only had certain areas, you're gonna see when I show you the piece that were sanded down to bare wood, I would cover those bare wood areas with this primer. You could use this for the entire piece. That is a-okay. It works. I've done it. I've tested it. And it's one of my favorite convenient primers to use. I used this when I couldn't get my GF quick enough for a job that I was doing at the beginning of the whole COVID thing. So I went and picked up like 3 or 4 cans of these, and I did an entire dresser sprayed with this. So it does work. But because I have my stain blocker primer, I'm gonna go white with these dressers. The stain blocker's white. I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and show you the dresser, and then I will walk through the rest of the steps. But basically what you need to do is sand, wipe down, prime, and then paint. It's not a lot, but the problem is when you're going through the sanding, cleaning process, getting it ready, that can take a long time because depending on how it was painted, you might have a lot more work than you bargained for. Sometimes you even have to strip the piece. So that's an extra step that I did not have to do on this. It sanded off just fine, so I was a-okay. If I ran into issues like when there's peeling paint, honestly, the best way to get that off is strip it first, sand it second, prime it, and then paint it. So anyway, let's show you guys what I'm working on. Okay, so this is one of the pieces here. The other two are in the background there, and I have sanded all of them down. I'm gonna show you really up close so you guys can see that finish is really smooth. What was on there prior, I have one other piece, so I'm gonna show you guys. This is what it looked like before, and you can see what I'm talking about. They're brush strokes. So I sanded all of that out. I haven't gotten to this piece yet. I'm gonna start with the set first. So Here it is here. If I wanted to, I could go ahead and spot prime all of these areas here, but because I'm going from black to white, I'm just gonna give it one huge coat of primer all over the whole entire piece. So I was not exactly 100% honest. I said we were going to use the GF Stain Blocker Primer, and we are not going to use that today because I just checked stock and I've got about 1/3 of a can left, which is not enough to do this project. So we're going to switch it up today. We're going to use this stuff. I've got a few cans which should be just enough to cover these projects that I'm working on. I would say one of these will yield that dresser size that I'm going to be doing, giving it 2 good coats, and then the other can I'll use for the nightstand. So this is kind of fun because I haven't done a video where I've used this product. I do love this product as a secondary, and we're going to use it today. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so just a note, when you're using primer, any primer, whether it's in a spray can or you're doing it by hand, I like to wear a respirator or a mask. I also work in a well-ventilated area. Do not use this inside of your house. It will smell horribly. It's not good for you. And so work outside, use a fan if you can. Definitely pick a mask or a respirator, one that preferably this is a full-on respirator, or this one, this is by RZ Mask, and it's got the filters inside, which are extremely helpful. So anything is better than nothing, but I always wear one, and I would definitely recommend it when you're using this product. All right, let's go ahead. Okay, I'm all masked up, I'm gloved up because primer sucks to get out of your skin, so let's go ahead and get this on. The key with this is just like spray painting, basically. You want to stay about 12 inches back from the piece or it will pull up and you'll get a lot of run. So that is it. That took all of like 2.5 minutes to go ahead and do. So I'm going to show you here. It dries really fast. That's the thing that's great about this. And it is sandable. So what I always do is sand in between my coats of primer. I'm going to do this again, another pass after I sand through, in case I think you might have seen I got a little drop just from the can kind of leaked, but I'll sand it with 320 grit sandpaper, and then I'll just do another little light coat. The thing with primer, and I'll show you up close what it looks like, it doesn't have to be perfect. The idea is to cover all of those exposed spots that you are concerned about. And then for me on this piece, it's all of those spots that were sanded down to bare wood, because we want all of the same uniform finish at the end. If you don't prime bare wood and then you've got some that has a finish on it, you're gonna see different levels of that finish. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and let this dry. I will go ahead and scuff it up with 320 just to get out anything that might be in it. I'll respray a second coat and then it's ready to go. This is one coat. As you can see, it's a little heavier on the top, and that's fine. I'm gonna go ahead and go back over this. Initially, I just wanna get on as much as I can without going too heavy. The thing is, if you go too heavy, like I said, what'll happen is you'll completely run it. And I've done that so many times. And so what I've decided from going forward is with primer, you're just gonna do a few coats so that you make sure you don't try to apply it too heavy. So that's what it should look like after your first coat. As soon as this dries, which I think it's about, literally in this heat I've got right now, I've got dry heat, it's about 10 minutes. So in about 10 minutes, I'll go ahead and sand out. Now see, like I got a little blue whatever right here. Plus it feels kind of rough. So I want to go ahead and make sure that I sand that down nice and smooth. Once I do, it'll feel like butter. Okay, so I've sanded this down smooth. Now it is way smoother. The great thing about primer is it will also allow you to see where maybe you want to fill a couple of spots here and there. So like for instance, I want to fill that just a little teeny tiny bit with wood filler. that, you know, I didn't see before. So there's a couple of those on there. I'm gonna go ahead and fill those, let that dry, reprime, and then I'm ready to go. All right, so I went ahead and knocked it down with my sanding block. 320 grit sanding block is what I used. You can use that or you can use paper, it doesn't matter. And then I went ahead and went with a second coat. Now you will see in certain areas it looks like it's peeking through, and that's totally fine. Like I mentioned earlier, your primer doesn't have to look perfect like your paint. Those areas that look like they're peeking through are areas where I might have sanded a little bit because it was a little rough or gritty feeling, and it's not an issue. So for the most part, this piece is like all covered and ready to go. So the next step is paint, and we're gonna go ahead and get that going. All right, so first coat is on, and what I want to tell you is it's not going to look pretty. And even though we primed it, white does take several coats. The paint I'm using today, I forgot to show you guys, it's the General Finishes Enduro Poly in white. And what that is, in case you don't know, it's a spray-only product. It's their Pro line, and it's paint and poly in one. For a job like this, especially having to do the entire piece with the top, I love using the Enduro line because it's all built in, it's all in one, it's super durable, and as you guys know, if you've been doing this, and if you don't know, I'm going to give you a little tip. Top coating whites is really tricky. White tends to yellow on its own over the years, and when you top coat it, even with a water-based non-yellowing top coat, you're gonna have some yellowing. So a product like this is perfect for that type of job where I need that durability, and so that's why I'm using it. So we're gonna go ahead and let this dry. Now, what is the dry time for the Enduro Poly? Typically, I think it's actually dry to the touch in 5 minutes. I wouldn't do anything in 5 minutes, but I would say about 30 minutes to 60 minutes, I will recoat this. On the second coat, you're gonna see it take shape so much better, and the coverage will really be there. My experience when I have primed with this paint, 3 coats and you're done. So, all right, so I want to show you guys after the first coat, I did go ahead and sand this with 320 grit sandpaper, knock down any grit that might have, you know, felt weird, anything from the primer previously. So that's where you see some of these breakthrough spots. I went ahead and I sanded down any rough spots. I will say I'm very happy with the way that the first coat is laying down. Again, I'm not expecting any type of a full coverage. This is what you should expect after one coat, especially of white. So it's ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and do the second coat now. And so far so good. I see no adhesion issues anywhere on the piece, which is always good news. If you have them, they're gonna pop up right after you start. Okay, and this is coat 2, so we're gonna go ahead, this is still wet. I'm gonna let this dry. I'm gonna come back in about 30 minutes, and then I don't necessarily need to sand again. Usually it's between the primer and the first coat you need to sand, but we'll see what happens. But I wanna show you guys, I'm gonna come around this way, because I'm gonna show you how good that coverage is. You can see where it's wet still, but the coverage is so good. That's 2 coats. I would say 3, we're gonna be all done. All right, you guys, so that's it. This is the end of 3 coats. It looks really, really good. To be honest with you, I really don't think I'm gonna do any more. Now what I do is I tip it over on its back side so that I can get underneath all of there. And yeah, so I'll show you the final product once it is all done on my staging area, but I'm very happy. Let me show you really up close so you guys can kind of see how nice the finish is. I mean, from before, it's just incredibly different. All right, so that is it. That is 3 coats completely done. That's the General Finishes Enduro Poly in satin. And I choose satin for all of my finishes just because they look really good. See the sheen there? If you look down at the bottom, it's got a really beautiful sheen to it. Not too much. And then, yes, I know I have one piece of hardware on because that's all I had in stock, just so you guys can see. The client wanted all these black knobs, and so the rest are coming in today. But yeah, this is the finish. And as you can see, it came out beautiful. I'm super happy with the way the end result came out. And yes, I went ahead and did the nightstands as well. While the dresser was drying, I primed those in a different area and then got those done too. So there it is. All right, you guys, that is it. We're at the end of the video. I hope that this was helpful for you to see the process in which I go through if I'm going to be painting already painted furniture. Now, as I mentioned in my opening segment, if it's your piece and you've already painted, the steps are going to be a little bit different. You may not have to do as many steps. A lot of times, if it's a piece that I've painted, I know what it was sealed with, I know what product was used, and I'm happy with the finish, then I can go ahead and paint right over that, and I don't have to do all of these steps where sanding and priming and all that good stuff. But in this case, I had no idea what products were used. The finish was not to my standards, so therefore it had to be sanded off. Sometimes you will have to use stripper. That's going to be an extra step. If it's a latex paint or something that's really thick and it's not going to sand off easily, that would be your first step. Thankfully, I didn't have to do that in this case. I could go right to the sanding. Now, keep in mind, when I say I went right to the sanding, I spent a lot of time on sanding. I wasn't really happy with how it was sanding up because I could still see that person's paint finish, and I didn't like it. Myself personally, I pride myself on really smooth finishes, and I didn't like what I was getting, so I had to keep on sanding. So you do not need to sand it to bare wood unless that is something you want to do. You just want to sand through that finish of paint as much as you can. Then you're going to wipe it down, you're going to prime it, and then you're ready for paint. So anyway, please leave comments, positive comments, or any questions, because I love interacting with you guys and I will answer your questions always. Thank you so much for being subscribers. Keep subscribing so you can continue to get all of my videos, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. One thing I forgot to mention that I always forget to mention, because a lot of people don't know this, but I do teach. So if you are not getting enough detailed information from my videos, make sure you go to my website, to my shop, and I'll put the link down below as well, because I do teach and I do virtually, which is super helpful. That's mostly what I do. Kind of the in-person one-on-ones have gone away and we do all virtual, and I find that my feedback on those are very helpful. People love them, and if you're interested, go check it out.